She vanished without a trace, leaving her car abandoned by a lake. Police searched the country, newspapers offered rewards, and the world waited. But this wasn't one of her stories. This was real. This was Agatha Christie, the Queen of Crime. Chapter 1. The Beginning of a Writer. Agatha Mary Clarissa Miller was feeling bored. It was a cold winter morning in 1908, and she had to stay in bed because she was ill. "I'm feeling much better today," she told her mother, Clara. "I think I'll get up." "No, you won't," said Clara firmly. "The doctor said you must stay in bed and keep warm. You're still not well." Agatha was 18, but in those days daughters had to obey their mothers. "But I'm bored," she complained. "Well, find something to do," said her mother. "You can read a book or write a story. Yes, why don't you write a story?" "Write a story?" Agatha said in surprise. "Yes," said Clara, "just like Madge." Madge was Agatha's older sister. She was 11 years older and sometimes wrote short stories for magazines like Vanity Fair. "I don't think I can write stories," said Agatha. "How do you know if you've never tried?" her mother said. Then she went to get paper and a pencil. Soon, Agatha sat up in bed and began to write her first story. She called it House of Beauty, a strange story about dreams. It wasn't very good. She typed it on Madge's old typewriter and sent it to a magazine. But a few weeks later, it came back with a letter. "Thank you for sending us your story. We are sorry, but we cannot publish it." "You must try again," said her mother. Clara always believed her daughters could do anything, so Agatha kept writing stories and sending them to magazines, but they were all returned. She felt a little sad. "I'll try writing a novel," she thought. Then an idea came to her. She remembered a beautiful young girl she had seen in a hotel in Cairo when she visited Egypt with her mother. The girl was always with two men, one on each side. One day, Agatha heard someone say, "That girl will have to choose between them soon." That small moment gave Agatha her idea. She began writing a story about a young woman living in Cairo. It wasn't a detective story, but a love story called Snow Upon the Desert. It was really two long stories joined together into one book. When she finished, she sent it to several publishers, but each one returned it. "Oh dear," said Agatha. "What shall I do now? Why don't you show it to Eden Phillpotts?" suggested her mother. Eden Phillpotts was a famous writer who lived nearby. He had written more than 100 novels and many plays. Agatha felt nervous about sending her book to such a well-known man, but she did it anyway. Mr. Phillpotts read her book carefully and wrote back kindly. "Some of your writing is very good. I will give you a letter to take to my agent, Hughes Massey." Agatha, still only 18, took the train to London. It was a long trip over 200 miles from her home in Torquay, Devon. The trains were much slower in those days. Agatha was shy, and Hughes Massey was a big, serious man. She gave him the letter from Mr. Phillpotts. He read it, spoke kindly with her, and said he would read her book. Agatha went home to wait. Months later, she received her book back. There was a note from Massey. "I'm sorry, but I cannot find a publisher for your novel. My advice is to stop thinking about it and start a new book." Agatha felt disappointed, but she did not give up. She began to plan another story, after a few important changes came into her life. Chapter 2. A Shy Young Man. Agatha's father, Frederick, died in 1901 when she was only 11 years old. He was an American, 10 years older than Clara, Agatha's mother. After his death, Clara began to travel often, usually taking Agatha with her. In 1911, when Agatha was 21, Clara became ill. "You should go somewhere warm and sunny to get better," her doctor advised. So Clara decided to travel to Egypt again and took Agatha with her. They stayed at a hotel in Cairo. Nearby, some English soldiers were living, and they often came to the hotel dances. Agatha was shy, but she loved dancing. During her stay in Cairo, she went to about 50 dances. She met many young men and had a wonderful time. When she returned to England, invitations soon began to arrive. People invited her to garden parties, tennis matches, dances, and weekends in the countryside. One day, a young army officer named Reggie Lucy came back from Hong Kong. Agatha already knew his 3 sisters and often played tennis with them. But she had never met Reggie before. He was a quiet and shy man who preferred playing golf to going to parties or dances. "I like playing golf, but I'm not very good at it," Agatha told him when they met. I could help you," Reggie said shyly. He had dark hair and brown eyes, and Agatha liked him immediately. While Reggie was in England, they played golf together almost every day. One hot afternoon, after playing for a while, Agatha said, "It's too warm, Reggie. Shall we rest for a bit?" They sat under a tree, away from the sun, and talked quietly. Then suddenly Reggie said, "I want to marry you, Agatha. Did you know that? Maybe you guessed, but you're still very young, and I'm not that young," Agatha said quickly. "Of course," said Reggie, smiling. "A pretty girl like you could marry anyone." "I don't think I want to marry anyone else," said Agatha softly. "Yes, I think I'd like to marry you." "I have to go back to Hong Kong in 10 days," Reggie said. "I'll be there for 2 years. But when I return, if there isn't anyone else, there won't be anyone else," Agatha promised. So Reggie left for Hong Kong. Agatha wrote letters to him, and he wrote back. It was all decided. When Reggie returned to England, they would get married. Chapter 3. Tea at the Railway Station. On October 12, 1912, when Agatha was 22 years old, she went to a dance at the home of Lord and Lady Clifford. Their house was near Chudley, about 12 miles from Torquay. Many young people were there, and Agatha was happy to talk and dance with them. During the evening, a young army officer came up to her. "Would you like to dance with me?" he asked. "Me?" said Agatha, surprised. "Oh yes, all right." He was tall and handsome, with kind blue eyes. His name was Archibald Christie. Agatha liked him immediately. They danced together many times that night, and Archie told her about his dreams. "I want to be a pilot," he said. "I'm trying to join the Royal Flying Corps." "How exciting," said Agatha with a smile. A week later, Agatha was having tea with some friends at a house across the street from her home, Ashfield, when the telephone rang. The call was for her. It was her mother. "Can you come home, Agatha?" Clara said. "There's a young man here. He's just arrived, and I've given him tea. I don't know him, but I think he wants to see you." Agatha wasn't very pleased. She had to leave her friends and hurry home. But when she arrived, she was surprised to find Archie Christie waiting for her. "Hello," he said shyly. "I was in Torquay, and I thought it might be nice to see you." His face turned red, and he looked down at his shoes. Agatha smiled warmly. Archie stayed for the rest of the afternoon, and even stayed for supper. When it was time to go, he asked, "Agatha, would you come with me to a concert in Exeter? We could have tea afterward at the Redcliffe Hotel." "I'd love to," said Agatha, then looked at her mother. "May I, Mother?" "A concert, yes," said Clara. "But tea at a hotel? No, not at a hotel." Archie thought quickly. "Perhaps I could take Agatha to tea in the restaurant at Exeter Railway Station," he suggested. Agatha tried not to laugh, and her mother finally agreed. So Agatha and Archie went to the concert, and afterward had tea together at Exeter Railway Station. There's a New Year's dance in Torquay on January 2nd, said Agatha when Archie brought her home later that night. "Will you come?" Archie smiled. "Of course," he said. "I want to see you as often as I can." When Archie came to the New Year's dance, he was very quiet and didn't seem happy. He looked worried about something, but Agatha didn't ask him why. 2 days later, on January 4th, 1913, they went to another concert together. Archie was still quiet. After the concert, Agatha finally asked, "What's wrong, Archie?" "The Royal Flying Corps has accepted me," he said. "I have to leave Exeter in 2 days. I'm going to Salisbury." He looked at her seriously. "Agatha, you must marry me. There will never be anyone else for me, only you. I've known it since the first time I met you at the Cliffords' dance." Agatha was very surprised. But I can't marry you. I've already promised Reggie that I'll marry him." Then she told Archie about Reggie Lucy. "You didn't marry him before he left," said Archie. "Why not? It's because you don't really love him. We thought it was better to wait," began Agatha. "I won't wait," said Archie firmly. "I want to marry you next month, or the month after." "We can't," said Agatha. "We don't have any money. How will we live?" But deep down, she knew she wanted to marry Archie. "Archie has asked me to marry him, and I want to," she told her mother. "I want to very much." Clara was shocked. "You must wait," she said to them both. "I like you, Archie, but you're only 23 and neither of you has any money." So Archie went to Salisbury and they waited. Agatha wrote a letter to Reggie Lucy. It was a hard letter to write, but Reggie sent back a kind reply. "Don't worry about it," he wrote. "I understand." In August 1914, war suddenly began between England and Germany. Archie went to France with the Royal Flying Corps, and Agatha worked as a volunteer nurse at Torbay Hospital in Torquay. Archie came back to England for 5 days in December, and Agatha went to London to meet him. Together they travelled to Bristol, where Archie's mother lived. They couldn't wait any longer. They wanted to get married. Archie's mother didn't approve, but Clara had a different opinion. "Yes, marry him now," she said. "There's a war on. No one knows what will happen. Be happy while you can." So Agatha and Archie were married on December 24th, 1914. 2 days later, Archie returned to the war, and Agatha didn't see him again for 6 months. During the summer of 1915, Agatha became ill and had to stop nursing for several weeks. When she returned to work, she moved to the hospital dispensary. There, she learned something that would later become very useful for a detective story writer. She learned all about poisons. Chapter 4. The Birth of a Detective. One day before the war, Agatha was talking with her sister Madge about detective stories. They both loved reading them. "I'd like to try writing a detective story myself," said Agatha. "You couldn't do it," said Madge. "They're very difficult. I've thought about it before." "Well, one day I'm going to try," said Agatha firmly. The idea stayed in Agatha's mind. She wanted to show Madge that she could write one. Years later, when she began working in the hospital dispensary, she started thinking again about writing a detective story. There must be a murder in it, of course, she thought. Questions filled her mind. But what kind of murder? Poisoning, perhaps. Who will die? Who will be the murderer? When? How? Why? Where? And what about the detective? In Torquay, there were some Belgian families who had come to England because of the war in Belgium. Everyone in town, including Clara, was kind to them. She gave them furniture for their homes and tried to help them feel welcome. Agatha suddenly remembered them. What about a Belgian detective? She thought. She began to imagine him in her mind. He'll be a very clever and tidy little man. But what shall I call him? I know Hercules. That's a strong name for a small man. She smiled. And his last name? Poirot. Hercule Poirot. Yes, that's it. Agatha thought about her story during every quiet moment in the dispensary. She had learned a lot about poisons, how some killed quickly and others slowly, how much was dangerous, what they smelled and tasted like, and what happened to people when they died. Did their faces turn blue? Did they die quietly or in pain? A good detective and a good detective writer had to know these things. At home, she began writing her story on Madge's old typewriter. "What are you doing?" Clara asked one day. "I'm writing a detective novel," said Agatha. "I want to finish it, but it's quite difficult." "Why don't you finish it during your holiday?" said Clara. "Go somewhere peaceful and take it with you. How about Dartmoor?" "Yes," said Agatha. "Dartmoor." Dartmoor was a wide, lonely moor in Devon. Agatha took the typewriter and stayed at the Moorland Hotel at Haytor. It was a large hotel with many rooms, but not many guests. For 2 weeks, she wrote in her room every morning, then took long walks on the moor in the afternoons. Everything went well. Her characters felt real in her mind, and during her walks she planned the next day's work. By the end of her holiday, she had finished the second half of the book. When she returned home, she sent it to a publisher. They sent it back. She wasn't surprised. She sent it again to another publisher, but it came back again. A third publisher also returned it. Finally, she sent it to the Bodley Head Publishing Company, and then forgot all about it. 2 years passed. Archie came back to work in London. The war ended, and Agatha had a baby girl named Rosalind. The 3 of them were living in a small flat in London, when one morning in 1919 a letter arrived. It was from the Bodley Head. Agatha opened it quickly and read, "Whoop. Will you call at our offices? We would like to talk about your book. It's about my book, The Mysterious Affair at Styles." She told Archie. "I think they want to publish it." "Then you must go and see them at once," said Archie. Agatha went to the publisher's office, where she met John Lane, a small man with white hair. "Please sit down," he said kindly. He had a gentle voice and sharp blue eyes. "Some of my readers think we could publish your book, but you'll need to change the last chapter and make a few small edits." Agatha was so excited she could hardly listen. She agreed to everything. The Mysterious Affair at Styles was her first detective story, and she couldn't wait to see it in bookshops. She rewrote the ending, made the changes John Lane asked for, and finally he was pleased with it. Chapter 5. Success and Secrets. Agatha's first book, The Mysterious Affair at Styles, was published in 1920. But before it appeared, she had already started writing another one. "It was Archie's idea." "Mother is having trouble paying all the bills at Ashfield," Agatha told him one day. "Why doesn't she sell Ashfield?" Archie asked. "The house is too big for one person. She could buy a smaller place." "Sell Ashfield?" said Agatha in shock. "Oh, no, she can't. I love that house. It's our family home." "Then why don't you do something about it?" said Archie. "Do something? Like what?" "Why don't you write another book?" said Archie. "Maybe it will make a lot of money." Agatha thought about it seriously. Ashfield meant everything to her, and she didn't want to lose it. Could she really help by writing another book? "Maybe I could," she thought. "But what shall I write about?" The answer came one afternoon while she was having tea in a cafe. At a table nearby, 2 people were talking. Agatha wasn't trying to listen, but then she heard a name. Janefish. What a strange name, thought Agatha. But what a good start for a story. Someone hears a strange name in a cafe, and then, What happens next? Maybe not fish. Perhaps Jane Finn sounds better. Yes, that's it. By the time she left the cafe, a story idea was already forming in her mind. She went home and started writing immediately. She called the book The Secret Adversary, and it was published in 1922. That story didn't include her Belgian detective, Hercule Poirot, but her next book, Murder on the Links, did. Readers loved Poirot. He was a short, neat little man with bright green eyes, dark hair, and a fine black moustache. Like Sherlock Holmes, he was very clever, and he liked to remind people just how clever he was. More books followed, some with Poirot, some without. The Man in the Brown Suit, Poirot Investigates, and The Secret of Chimneys. Hughes Massey, Agatha's agent, was helping her now. You need another publisher, he said. One who will pay you more than the Bodley head. You're a good detective story writer, Agatha. Your books are starting to sell really well. So he sent her next book, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, to William Collins Publishers. It became a turning point in Agatha's career. When The Murder of Roger Ackroyd came out in spring 1926, everyone was talking about it, especially the shocking twist at the end. That's cheating, some readers complained when they discovered who the murderer was. No, it isn't, others said. It's a brilliant idea. What's wrong with everyone? Agatha said to Archie, I didn't cheat. It's unfair to say that. Readers just need to look carefully. And she was right. Every clue was in the book, and a clever reader could solve the mystery, but most people couldn't. And if you want to know the surprise ending and the murderer's name, you'll have to read the book yourself. After the murder of Roger Ackroyd, Agatha's books sold faster than ever. She began earning more money, and soon the Christies bought a house in Sunningdale, about 30 miles from London. What shall we call it? Asked Agatha. Styles, said Archie, smiling. After your first book. They even hung a picture of the cover of The Mysterious Affair at Styles on the wall. But not long after they moved to Sunningdale, something happened that shocked the whole country. Agatha disappeared. People believed it happened because she was deeply unhappy. First, her beloved mother had died. Then she discovered that Archie had fallen in love with another woman, a young lady named Nancy Neal. Chapter 6. The Mysterious Disappearance. On the morning of Friday, December 3rd, 1926, Archie left their home, Styles, to spend the weekend with some friends. A young woman named Nancy Neal was also staying at the same house. Perhaps Agatha knew this, or perhaps she didn't, no one can be sure. No one really knows what Agatha was thinking late that dark winter evening. Her daughter Rosalind, now 7 years old, was asleep in bed, and the 2 housemaids were in the kitchen. But we do know one thing: around 11 o'clock that night, Agatha left the house and drove away in her car. She didn't come home. On Saturday morning, a tired-looking woman arrived by taxi at the Hydro Hotel in Harrogate, Yorkshire. The Hydro was one of the biggest and best hotels in town. "Can I have a room, please?" the woman asked. She was carrying a small suitcase. "Yes, of course," said the man at the front desk. "We have a nice room on the first floor, room 5. It has hot and cold water, and the price is £7 a week." "Thank you, that will be fine," said the woman. "What name, please?" asked the man. "Mrs. Teresa Neal," she said. That same cold Saturday morning, a 15-year-old boy named George Best was walking near a lake called the Silent Pool, at a place called Newlands Corner, about 14 miles from Sunningdale. Suddenly, George saw a car off the road near the water, with its lights still on. "That's strange," he thought. "Why is that car down there, and why are the lights still on?" He walked closer. The car was empty, but the driver's door was open. Inside, he saw a coat, an open suitcase, 3 dresses, some shoes and papers with the name Mrs. Agatha Christie on them. George ran to find a policeman. Soon, newspapers all over England were full of the story, with Agatha's picture on the front page. Where was the famous detective story writer? Was she dead, murdered, or had she taken her own life? The Daily News offered a reward of $100 to anyone who could find her. By the next weekend, hundreds of policemen and thousands of people were searching the countryside. A reporter from the Daily Mail asked Archie, "Did your wife ever talk about disappearing?" "Yes," said Archie. "She once told her sister, 'I could disappear any time I wanted to. I'd plan it carefully, and no one would ever find me. Maybe that's what she's done. Or maybe she's ill and doesn't remember who she is.'" The police questioned Archie many times, watched his house, and even followed him to his office. "They think I killed Agatha," he told a friend. Meanwhile, the woman calling herself Mrs. Teresa Neal stayed quietly at the Hydro Hotel. She had breakfast in her room each morning, then sat reading in the hotel lounge in the afternoons. She spoke politely to other guests and seemed worried that no letters came for her. One day, a chambermaid spoke to Mrs. Taylor, the hotel manager's wife. "Mrs. Neal looks just like the woman in the Daily Mail picture," she said. "You know the missing writer, Agatha Christie," Mrs. Taylor told her husband. But they decided to keep quiet. They didn't want trouble at the hotel. But 2 musicians at the hotel, Bob Tappan and Bob Leeming, had also noticed the quiet lady in the corner. "I'm sure that Neal woman is Agatha Christie," said Tappan. "I think you're right," said Leeming. "We'd better tell the police." And the next day they did. The police informed Archie at once, and he arrived at the Hydro Hotel at 6:45 p.m. on Tuesday, December 14th. When Agatha came out of the sitting room, Archie saw her and walked up to her. "Hello, Agatha," he said gently. She looked at him carefully but seemed unsure who he was. "Hello," she said quietly. Soon, the hotel was crowded with newspaper reporters. Later, Archie told them, "I don't think my wife knows who she is. She doesn't recognize me or remember where she is." The next day, he and Agatha left the hotel together. Reporters followed them everywhere, taking photographs. Agatha hid her face behind her hands. She looked thin and very pale. In London, hundreds of people waited at King's Cross Station to see them arrive from Harrogate. Everyone wanted a look at the woman of mystery. Archie led the silent, frightened Agatha through the crowd. Reporters shouted questions and cameras flashed, but neither of them said a word. For the rest of her life, Agatha never spoke about Harrogate, the Hydro Hotel, or Teresa Neal again. What really happened that night after she left Styles? Why did she abandon her car? How did she reach Harrogate? No one ever truly knew. It remained a mystery, and it still is today. Chapter 7. A New Chapter in Love. In the first weeks of 1927, Agatha went to stay with her sister Madge and Madge's husband in Cheadle, near Manchester. Archie stayed at Styles, but he wanted to marry Nancy Neal, so he asked Agatha for a divorce. At first, Agatha refused, but in the end she agreed. They were divorced in April 1928, and their daughter Rosalind lived with Agatha. "I don't want to use the name Christie anymore," Agatha told her publishers. "I'll think of another name. You can't change it now," they said. "Readers know the name Agatha Christie. That's why they buy your books. If you change it, no one will recognize you." So, although she wasn't happy about it, Agatha kept the name Christie, and her publishers were right by. Now thousands of people in England and America were reading her books. Later that year, in the autumn of 1928, Agatha decided to travel to the West Indies for a holiday. Rosalind was at school, and Agatha wanted to rest somewhere sunny. She bought tickets for a ship to Jamaica. 2 days before she was due to leave, she had dinner with some friends. At the table were a couple who had just come back from Baghdad, Iraq Commander and Mrs. Howe. "People always say Baghdad is a terrible place," said Mrs. Howe, "but we loved it." Agatha listened with great interest as Mrs. Howe talked about the city. The more she heard, the more she wanted to see Baghdad herself. "How do you get there?" Agatha asked. "By sea? You can go by train," said Mrs. Howe. "On the Orient Express." "The Orient Express?" said Agatha. "I've always wanted to travel on that famous train. I'll go to Baghdad instead of the West Indies." The Howes helped her plan the journey and wrote down a list of places to visit. "You must go to said Commander Howe. The next day, Agatha changed her ticket to travel on the Orient Express to Istanbul, and from there across the desert to Baghdad. It was an exciting trip, and the first time Agatha had ever traveled alone. Later, it inspired one of her most famous books, Murder on the Orient Express. While she was in Baghdad, she remembered Commander Howe's words, "You must go to Agatha was very interested in archaeology, and at that time the archaeologist Leonard Woolley and his wife Catherine were working at Catherine Woolley was delighted to meet Agatha. "I love your books," she said. "I just finished reading The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. It was wonderful." Agatha soon became a special guest of the Woolleys. She loved watching the archaeologists at work. It was slow and tiring. Each piece of earth had to be dug up very carefully. Some days they found nothing, but sometimes they discovered old pots, knives, or small treasures thousands of years old. Every find was exciting. "You must come back another year," said Catherine Woolley, and Agatha did. In March 1930, she returned to just before the Woolleys were due to go back to England. The plan was for Agatha to travel home with them through Syria and Greece. A young archaeologist named Max Mallowan was working with the Woolleys. He was 25 years old and a quiet, polite man. "I've told Max to show you Najaf and Kerbala," said Catherine. "Najaf is the holy city of the dead, and Kerbala has a beautiful mosque. When we leave and go to Baghdad, he'll take you there. You can visit Nipper on the way." "But doesn't Max want to go to Baghdad with you?" asked Agatha. "He must have friends there before he goes home to England." "Oh, no," said Catherine with a smile. "Max will be happy to take you." And Max really was pleased. He liked Agatha from the moment they met, and she liked him too. They laughed and talked easily, enjoying every minute together. After their trip, they met the Woolleys again in Baghdad, and all four of them travelled on to Greece. But when they arrived at their hotel in Athens, 7 telegrams were waiting for Agatha. Each one said the same thing. Rosalind was ill, and Agatha must come home immediately. "I'll go with you, Agatha," said Max. "Oh, thank you, Max," she said. "But don't you have other plans?" "I've changed my plans," said Max quietly. "I'm coming with you." They travelled home together. When they arrived, Agatha found that Rosalind was much better, which was a great relief. And soon there was even more good news. Although Agatha was 14 years older than Max, he had made up his mind he wanted to marry her. After returning to England, he asked her to marry him, and she said yes. They were married on September 11th, 1930, in Edinburgh, Scotland. 1930 was also the year when Agatha's other famous detective first appeared in The Murder at the Vicarage. Her name was Miss Jane Marple, a little old woman who lived in the quiet English village of St. Mary Mead. Miss Marple looked like a kind grandmother who enjoyed gardening and cooking. But behind her gentle smile, she had sharp eyes and ears. She noticed everything: names, faces, colors, sounds, and even the times of trains. And she always discovered the murderer before the police did. Readers loved Miss Marple, and she soon became as popular as Hercule Poirot. But was she based on a real person? Where? I can never remember. Agatha always said with a smile. Chapter 8. The Queen of Crime. For the next 25 years, Agatha traveled with Max on all his archaeological journeys. She loved traveling, and those years were the happiest of her life. They were also good years for her writing. "It's so quiet," Agatha often said, "and best of all, there's no telephone." Visiting new and exciting places gave her ideas for some of her best books, such as Death on the Nile, Appointment with Death, Murder in Mesopotamia, and They Came to Baghdad. By this time, Agatha Christie was one of the most famous detective story writers in the world. One of her most important fans was Queen Mary, the mother of the King of England. In 1946, Agatha received a letter from the British Broadcasting Corporation in London. "They want me to write a play for Queen Mary's 80th birthday," she told Max. "A play for the radio. Then you must do it," said Max with a smile. Agatha's radio play was called Three Blind Mice. Later, she turned it into a longer play for the London Theatre and gave it a new name: The Mousetrap. It became one of the most famous plays in history. It opened in 1952, and it has been performed in London theatres ever since. Even in 1997, 45 years later, people were still going to see it. Why has The Mousetrap stayed popular for so long? Of course, it's a very clever murder mystery, but there's another reason too. At the end of every performance, one of the actors speaks to the audience and says, "Please don't tell your friends who the murderer is. Let them come and see the play for themselves." And people always keep the secret. That's why, year after year, more and more people go to see The Mousetrap. In 1971, Queen Elizabeth made Agatha a Dame of the British Empire, one of the highest honours for a woman in Britain. But why did Agatha Christie become so famous? Perhaps because she was a truly great storyteller. She planned her mysteries with great care, placing clever clues throughout the story. The clues were never easy to notice, so readers had to think hard to guess who the murderer was. And by the end of each book, everything fit neatly together. The mystery was solved, and justice was done. Her stories were not really about murder and death, but about solving puzzles. They gave readers a feeling of satisfaction and comfort, because, in the end, the detective always caught the criminal. For a little while, Agatha's books allowed people to escape from real life, which was often not so tidy or comfortable. Agatha Christie died on January 12, 1976. During her lifetime, she wrote 67 detective novels, 10 books of short stories, 13 plays, 6 romantic novels under the name Mary Westmacott, and 2 autobiographical books. Many of her stories were made into films, the most famous being Murder on the Orient Express, 1974. Today, her books are still sold all over the world in more than 40 languages, from China to Nicaragua. Agatha Christie remains one of the greatest detective story writers of all time, a true woman of mystery, both in her books and in her life. The end. If you enjoyed this journey into mystery and history, like, share, and subscribe for more timeless stories of remarkable lives. And tell us in the comments, What's your favorite Agatha Christie novel or detective? Because in every mystery, there's always one final question waiting to be solved.